speaking to check it?
Yeah, no, it's
Sounds
perfect.
good.
So
Okay.
this is we are recorded.
Cool.
So I hope that you've got a good lawyer, because everything you will say can be held against you.
Let's hope.
So I'm a cop. I'm not a journalist. That's a twist. Thank you so much for being here, Wes. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you.
But since it's the first time that we actually speak together, I have to start by the most basic question. Like, who are you, Wes Craig?
My name is Wes Craig. I have been drawing comic books for about 20 years. The first 10 years were a lot of, workman type work for DC and Marvel and Wildstorm and stuff like that. And then after, the last like 10 plus years, it was working on Deadly Class with Rick Remender. I'm the artist, co-creator of Deadly Class with Rick Remender. That's in the United States and, North America, it's through Image comic books. And in France, it's through Urban, just like Kaya. And then after that, the last 2.5 years or whatever it is, I've been writing and drawing Kaya, which is a fantasy series about two siblings trying to survive in this kind of crazy fantasy world. And I do that through Image, through the English version is Image, and the French version is also Urban Comics. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's you actually. do you remember at what time you decided to be a comic book artist? Was it something that were planted inside you from the beginning of your life, or was it later?
Yeah, it pretty much. There's two brothers in me and my brother in my family, and he's the older brother. He started kind of getting into comic books when we were little kids. And it started off, actually, I'm from Montreal, so the first comics that I saw were like French translations of Marvel and DC comics. Like we would get these kind of, you probably had them over here at the same time, where it was like maybe like 2 or 3 Marvel stories packaged, like black and white packaged together, like no color, sometimes color, sometimes not.
Okay, so here it's always in color, never in black and white.
Oh, really?
Okay, yeah,
okay.
No.
So I don't know. I kind of assumed that it was like from France and came over to Quebec or something, but maybe it was made in Quebec. I don't know.
And maybe also it was from a time before I was reading comics.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. It's a long time ago, and they were reprinting like. It was the 80s, but a lot of it was like reprinting like 1970s, like Conan and Avengers and stuff like that. So I was seeing a lot of like Sal Buscema and John Byrne, George Perez, stuff like that. But yeah, we both got into comic books, and we both started drawing around. He was drawing. I started doing. The younger brother, so I was copying his stuff. I was drawing. I think I got a bit more obsessed with it than he did, and I just kind of became. That's all I wanted to do was draw and write comics. Even when I was a little kid, I was drawing the panels and doing the word balloons and the whole thing, making the plot and all that kind of stuff, and doing pinups of whatever superheroes that I liked at the time. And the other aspect was we went to comic shops when we were kids. We discovered those things together with other comic book friends, and I found I would browse and everything looked interesting, but when I found Teen Titans by Marv Wolfman and George Perez, that was the first thing where it like that was kind of the drug, where it's like I want to collect the whole series. It was like issue 17 or 18 or whatever it was, or 16, and so I would go back and try to like find the earlier issues and the later issues, and I was tracing George Perez drawings, trying to draw like him and stuff. So yeah, that was the first. Those elements were kind of the first things that really got me hooked. Yeah.
And was it hard to just be like a fan of comics to being an actual artist of comics? How long did it take to? Was it hard to be to start from being just a comic fan to be an actual comic artist?
I mean, yeah, I'd say from there. Yeah, it's a weird journey because it's kind of like now nerdy, geeky culture things are very accepted and universal. It's
mainstream. It's the new mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. But at the time, it was like you have to you get beat up at high school. It's like it was a different kind of world. So it was like I remember doing drawings in the hallway in my high school, and it would be like people would start asking me, "Can you draw me Ninja Turtles?" or "You can draw me this character, that character?" And I was like, I don't really want to be known as just like the art guy that people are trying to get drawings off of. So that became kind of almost like I would do that at home, and I would go out and try to be, try to be a cool kid, try to meet girls, all that kind of stuff as a teenager. But I would still go home and do all of the comic book stuff on my own, just solitary in the basement, just drawing in my parents' house. And then it was I wanted to be a comic book creator, comic book artist since I was a little kid. When I was in like grade 2, I did like a report where it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote like, I'm gonna draw for DC Comics, and I'm gonna live in New York City because that's where they live, or whatever, with a little drawing. Like I still have that piece of paper that I did. But then you get to be older, you realize it's not as easy as all that. And I think I didn't know for sure if I was actually going to be able to be a comic creator, but I just enjoyed it so much. I still just did it for my own enjoyment. Still just making my own comics. And then I went into illustration and design after high school in my hometown in Montreal. And that was the closest thing I could find to like comic book school. There was no comic book school, so that's the closest thing I could get to. So I went in there, and from there I started sending samples away at that time to like DC, Marvel, Dark Horse. I had pitches for my own series that I would pitch to like Image Comics. One of them was called The Third Kingdom, which was not a well-written thing. I wasn't a good writer at the time, but the basic seed of that fantasy world is kind of where Kaya and Jin like exist now. Like there's elements of that I actually kind of use in Kaya now. From there, graduated, moved out with my brother, kept sending samples away, and I would get, at first I get it's a bit of a long-winded thing, but I would get like submissions, like I would get responses, but they would be form letters from DC and Marvel, not signed by anybody, just saying, we've accepted we've seen your submissions. No, you're not ready yet, blah, 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 basic is the gist of it. And then I would get like occasionally like a handwritten note from an editor saying you're doing good, like keep up the good work, kind of, like slight little encouragements that would keep me going along the way. And then eventually I got an email from Matt Idelson. At the time, he was an editor at DC Comics, and he had received some Superman samples that I had sent away, and he thought they looked pretty good, and he was looking for a new artist for this series called Touch. And it was all good from there, but Touch got canceled after 6 issues, so then it was still more scraping after that, trying to find new jobs and stuff. But and then workman-like stuff, working on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Guardians of the Galaxy, here, like different jobs here and there. And then
do you keep class, do you keep good memories about that times? Because now you've I think that more than half of your career is creator-owned work. Mm-hmm, but do you still keep good memories about working with other companies' characters, or was it just like it was just for a job? It kind of
it would rise and fall depending on the job. Like the first email, like, we have a job for you was, there's very few like other things in my life that have been, meeting my wife, birth of my children, what else? Like, getting Kaya accepted by Image, because that was my own, I wrote and drew it. So it's, it's part of my, it's
another like, baby.
It's your baby. Yeah. So there's a few things along the way that were pretty big deals, but that email was definitely up there in terms of, I literally walked around the block in kind of a daze and like, pumping my fist like at the end of Breakfast Club or something like that, So I mean that was a great moment after trying for so many years to try to get in and just dreaming of it since I was a kid. That was a big deal for sure. But in terms of like your control is a bit out of your hands, and it's in the hands of the editors of the companies. So it's you don't really guide your career the way that you would hope that you would, I guess, when you're working for DC and Marvel. So there would be some things I would take the gig and I wouldn't be as interested, but it seemed like that's what was available at the time. And some things were super, super fun, But I think once I started working on Deadly Class, it's like I got a bit more of the recognition from the fans and the respect of other creators that I always hoped for. I remember the first time I went to a bar at a convention. And like, I didn't have to, people said, "Oh, this is Wes. He does Deadly Class," and it's like a good amount of those artists that I respected. They knew what Deadly Class was, and I was like, it was a good feeling. I was like, nice. That's what I wanted. Just a little bit of respect from other people. So yeah. It's and after Deadly Class, I was able to guide my career a bit better. And DC and Marvel would come to me, and it would be like I could now say yes to some things, no to some things. It'd be you have a bit more power after that. So yeah.
I don't want to speak too much about Deadly Class because you've done already tons of interview about that. But did you feel that it was a hit at the time? Is it something that you really felt?
Yeah, for sure it was. I mean,
except from the royalties that you got.
Yeah, well, in a lot of different ways. The one way that I just mentioned, where I had a bit more control over what I was doing, working with Rick, kind of immediately. I mean, I feel that there's a few people in the comic industry that I owe something to, and two of them are editors that were working at DC and Marvel that were like helping me out with hooking me up with jobs back in the day when they didn't have to. Like I always appreciated them. Nachi Castro was the first, and Ben Abernathy was the second. And then it's more than anybody, it's Rick, because it was really, like I said, like I was doing fine at Marvel and DC, but I don't think I was really building a fan base or anything that was really. I didn't have a really good long run on anything to build to be known for. There's a little bit of work on Guardians of the Galaxy here and there, but nothing big enough to kind of be known as the artist of that series, you know. So like once Rick gave me the opportunity to work on Deadly Class, it kind of changed everything. I was able to, you know, I mean, on the money side, I was able to sell my originals for more money. I was able to do commissions for, you know, like all that stuff, like all the pay the bills a little bit easier. Having a consistent job where I wasn't hounding editors to line up my next gig. Like it's like I'd work a few issues of something and then I wouldn't have anything and I'd have to email more people to try to line it up. Like just knowing that was there, and I could just feel every convention I went to, all of a sudden there was people coming over to the table that they were just purely like, they would talk about Deadly Class. A lot of them would talk about the chase scene from the first issue. It's like it made an impression on them. So I've had that conversation many times over the years. It kind of changed my life, really. Like it made it easier to buy a nicer place, to have a consistency of knowing where the next paycheck was coming from. I was able to create on the creative side. Rick gave me a lot of room to like experiment on the page and kind of play with the panels and the layouts and stuff that I have a lot of fun doing. Like he really gave me like a lot of room and gave me a very fair kind of deal in terms of being true, like true co-creators of it, you know. Didn't treat me like just a hand to draw his ideas. So yeah, it really changed a lot of things all at once. Yeah.
And the direct sequel to this question is, when Deadly Class ended, how did you feel? Because to be more precise, like did you feel like oh my god, that was my hit? Am I going to do better afterwards? Are going people to read me after that? You know?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. There's it's a mix of emotions. It's saying goodbye to these characters. You're going to draw them in commissions here and there afterwards. And it actually kind of feels nice to be like, oh man, I haven't drawn, you know, Billy or Petra in a while or whatever. I haven't drawn them in 2 or 3 years. And it's like these people that you drew for almost 10 years of your life. So you become so familiar with them and they become kind of real in your head, you know? But yeah, there's an aspect of that. I used to think of it a lot in terms of like, you know, you always want to think like the next thing I do, that's going to be even, hopefully that'll be a bigger hit, or hopefully that'll be this or that or whatever. But it's like, realistically, you're like, I might be in Led Zeppelin right now, and I might be sure Robert Plant had a good career afterwards, but it's not the same thing as being in Led Zeppelin, or, you know, like Sting in the Police, or I don't know, you know, like, or that's kind of a bad example. The example I was worried about was more like people who do not find success after they're in the big band. They think their egos are so big that they're like, I can do this by myself and be a solo artist. And it's like, no, it's the chemistry of that group that makes it special, you know? And I think, yeah, it might not be that I'll ever get a chance to really, that I would not be surprised if that is, at the end of the day, the main thing that I'm known for. Kaya does well. A lot of people come bring the book over to the table. So it's not like it's always Deadly Class and Kaya's this thing that I have to like push on people. If you're a fan of Deadly Class, like check this out or whatever. Like a lot of people already have the Kaya books, and it seems it doesn't do as well as Deadly Class, but it does well on its own, you know. Yeah, that's that. It's the fear of not work. It's all myself with my creative team, but it's like I'm writing and drawing it. I don't have Rick to like support me or to kind of back me up anymore. So yeah, so it's like there's fear in there, but also it's a series that I've been building. I was building up while I was working on Deadly Class, and it's something that writing and drawing comics was always like my dream goal. So yeah. There's excitement, there's fear, there's a mix of emotions, you know.
Yeah, so you were following scripts, but you always wanted to write your own scripts also.
That was the dream for sure. The big dream was always to just have a creator-owned, literally what I'm doing now, like writing, drawing, a creator-owned series is like, I would like to do many things in the career, but that really was like the ultimate, like it, and hope, and if that sells well enough that I can pay the bills, that's literally like all I want in the world. Like that's it, you know? So, and that's what I'm doing right now. So it's a pretty sweet spot to be in for sure.
And was it hard to start writing and drawing your own book? And then I was wondering if maybe your times with Rick also taught you how to write.
I learned quite a bit from Rick, but also Rick has a very different style than me in terms of how he writes, and also I think he'd be good in, or he is good in like a writer's room where he can generate ideas like in the moment, and he's very like kind of freestyle, like oh, maybe this, you know, we would talk on the phone and it would be like, okay, maybe this scene isn't working, and we'd spitball ideas back and forth, but he was really like able to spitball so many more ideas. I'm more methodical, where it's like I think of a problem.
Your method? I want to know what's your method.
My method is much more methodical and more take the dog for a walk, think about it for a while, kind of let it stew in my head, and then come up with a solution, rather than coming up with like brainstorming like 10 different things and being like, okay, that one. And you know, like it's in the artwork and the writing, that's just kind of my personality. I'm just more kind of like take it step by step, take it slow and steady, rather than kind of, I'm the tortoise, not the hare in the creative world, I guess, you know. But the results are the results, and I'm happy with the results. So it's like, I used to be envious that other people could do that kind of style, and it's more like, you know, everybody has their own strengths, and you just don't worry about what other people are doing. You play to your own strengths, you know. In terms of, but yeah, definitely learning from Rick in terms of what he would do sometimes. One thing that I always had a lot of respect for is he would, if a story wasn't working, he would rewrite it. He'd be like, this is not working. He'd crumple it up and throw it in the can and start from scratch. Like if he was really bothered by something. And comics is a monthly gig, and the deadlines are always looming. So I was like, wow, that takes some guts to kind of just be able to do that. I don't do that very often, but when something's, you have to be honest with yourself. And if something's not working, you got to go back to wherever it started failing, and however far back that is, and just, you know, start again, you know. So that does happen sometimes.
And there's also like the managing of the deadlines, because it takes much more time if you're doing both chores, like writing and drawing, that when you are just just the artist. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, certain aspects become faster, and certain aspects are more, obviously, the amount of time that you have to do to write is it slows you up. But in terms of like, but it's faster to write for yourself than to write for somebody else or whatever, where it's like you can do a very quick shorthand.
You do write your scripts. You just don't have them in your hand.
No, I can't do that. And maybe one day I could do that, but I know, like I've listened to interviews with like Chris Ware, like Acme Novelty Library, and he comes up with it like the day of. He comes up with it like as he's doing it, day by day. And to me, I'm just like, that's amazing, but I could never. That sounds crazy to me. Like I would just get lost, you know. I'd be worried that I would be forgetting the kind of arc of the story and stuff. So I need to have it. The big steps planned out. Like the entire Kaya is going to be 8 books, and it's all planned out. But the details are not planned out, you know. So it's like page by page. I don't know the dialogue or the exactly what happens to get me there. Yeah. But you know, I do month by month and kind of plan that out. But there's a roadmap though, you know.
So you already know that in the end it was just a dream, but you don't know how to get to get to that.
It was Marcus's dream. And he's going to wake up in the Deadly Class world, and that'll be it. It's a comic that Marcus is reading.
But let's speak about this marvelous book. So you mentioned? So sorry. So you mentioned that it was like a story that was in the making for quite some time. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us, like the origin story?
Yeah.
Because at some point, to be honest, I was thinking that maybe you had the idea when you. You get to be a father no, it was way before that.
Then. Yeah, when I started doing it, when we started doing it, the kids were really small. when I started doing the actual pages, the kids were really small. But when I created the book, I didn't have any kids, and I didn't actually have any plans to have any children. Like me and my wife weren't really talking about it until kind of near the end of Deadly Class, or not the end, but we knew we were getting close to that. But I knew that once I knew we were having kids, I knew that their lives would, of course, like inform Kaya and Jin and their personalities, and I would learn more about what these kids are like, and for sure, especially Jin, because Jin's like the younger of the two siblings, like the things that the kids say, I when he's having a temper tantrum or something like that, it's like I know now what that really looks like in real life. So you're able to kind of adapt the beautiful things about the way they think, the parts that are a little bit hard, like Kaya's the little older sister, but she's also basically the mother, father, like she's the caregiver of the situation. So it's like the things that are tough for her to deal with her little brother. It's like that's what I see in my kids and stuff, and how I react to it is how she reacts to it. And, you can relate some of those things into that book.
But would you say that if you still didn't have kids right now, would it be harder as an adult to write children characters? Because I really confused. I'm really asking myself, like, if I were to write a story with children, I really don't know how I would to.
It's tough. I have a real problem with like when people write. Maybe I do it myself. I don't know. It's hard to judge your own writing in a way. Like it's hard to kind of step back and judge it the same way that I can judge my art a bit easier than I can the writing in a way. There's so many more aspects to a person's personality and dialogue, and whether the dialogue feels stiff or realistic or whatever, I think what I was trying to do when I first was initially writing all this stuff, though, and figuring out more like character, writing stuff about who these characters are before I did the actual plot page by page stuff. It was just trying as hard as I could to go back to my age, like go as far back in my memory as I could, and thinking like, and I used to write little diary stuff, little things when I was a little kid. So it's like I'd go there and just try as hard as I can to like think like what did you not know about? What were you ignorant of? What did you think? How did you think the world worked? What were your misunderstandings when you're a kid, when you don't have all of the pieces yet? Like a lot of it is kind of like you're taking your best guess at how this thing works or that thing works, but you have no idea, So it was trying to put myself in that mind frame as much as I could. And I think if I didn't have kids, I would still be doing the same thing. I have a bit more of an in and an understanding of it now, but I guess I would just be ignorant of it, and like I wouldn't know you don't know what you don't know, kind of a thing. So yeah, I'd probably just, I don't know. It's like there's one scene in particular where where Jin has like a fit, and like his way of just repeating like no, like a certain way of having it. I was like, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have written that the same if I hadn't seen my kids lose it on me, So yeah, there's little bits and pieces here and there. Where I've taken that from real life for sure.
Okay, so getting back to the origin story.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how did it originate?
So it started with a pitch that I gave to Image, where I made I made like this maybe 15-page comic or whatever, called The Third Kingdom. I had it printed myself, like on like nice paper. I colored it, lettered it, everything myself. Sent that off to Image. The drawings I still have a copy of it, and like the drawings are okay. It was before I did any professional work at all, so it's over 20 years ago, this thing. And but the writing was not up to par. It wasn't like I didn't understand. It was like world building, but no like driver of the narrative. There was no. It's just a bunch of cool people in this world, interesting looking characters. But like, where are they going? What are they doing? There was none of that. It was just kind of like just stuff that I thought would be cool to draw. At the time, I think there was a lot. I didn't have an understanding of like. I just thought, as a writer, you just do what you think looks and feels cool. And then after a certain amount of time, you realize you're like, this is a conversation with the people that you're putting it out to. If you're not making them turn the page, then you're kind of failing in your job. Like it's like you have to kind of you tell the story that you want to tell, but you have to kind of include the elements that kind of make people want to keep finding out what's going to happen in your story. Whether it be like premonitions of like premonitions of something bad that's about to happen, or a hope that they'll get to the destination they're gonna, whatever the case may be. So it's like learning those little tricks along the way. kind of obvious stuff, but when you're doing it, it's not as obvious as you would think it would be until like, you have to kind of crack that code eventually. But anyway, so I pitched that to Image. I don't know if I got anything back from them, if I got a rejection letter or anything, but it wasn't accepted. I knew I wasn't ready anyway, but I still kept that world in my mind. And there's a character in there now called Razel, who's along for the ride with Kaya and Jin. He's like a trickster god. And he's like the same name, the same basic character design as this character from like way back in the day. The three characters in Third Kingdom were like a play on like Odin, Thor, and Loki. Like I always loved Norse mythology. And so Razel is kind of like Loki, and he's like a trickster up to no good, or sometimes good, sometimes evil. You never know exactly what he's going to do. The Norse mythology version, not the Marvel version. So he's in there now. So it's that kind of a world with those different types of sci-fi meets fantasy and mythology types of characters. But I had no driver, and that's when years later, it's like I was the first few years of working on Deadly Class. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I started doodling and I came up with Kaya. She was an adult at the time. She was like a full-grown, just a badass hunter adult. And then eventually she became a child, and it changed.
Did she have already the?
She had, she had. What's weird is she had. This sounds strange, but like, she had the arm and the black across her eyes, and then like years later, like Mad Max comes out, and it's like Furiosa has the arm and the black across the eyes, and I was like, oh, that's strange, but it's just kind of like cool.
It's like George Miller saw your drawings and he stole from you.
Yeah. An aspect of that on it, like it all comes from something, right? So I think Hellboy was probably the biggest thing in terms of like this cool one bigger than the other kind of arm. The right hand of Doom was probably the biggest influence on the arm. The black across the face is just looking probably at the same thing they were looking at though, in terms of like Maori and Native American and like face paint type stuff, like traditional face paint of ancient cultures and things like that. Where just you see photos of that kind of stuff. It looks cool. You want to adapt it into your own work. So yeah.
So the characters you design just also solve the equation maybe of your story. So that's how we.
Yeah, I think there was like I made Kaya, and then it was like, well, she needs some kind of a goal, and at first you don't know what that's going to be. So it's like they call it like the MacGuffin, the story engine of like what it is. And at first it was an object, and I was like, you're just developing it over time, trying to make it more original. And I was like, well, what if the object is more like, well, what if that's a person? And that kind of became Jin. It's like, what if it's her younger brother? What if she's not an adult? Because if she's just this older badass, if she's a kid, it's that much harder for her to get. She's a very capable little girl, but she's still a little girl, so she still makes a lot of mistakes and stuff. So just more obstacles in their way, trying to make it more difficult to get where they're going. So yeah, it was just like like evolving those things over time. And again, I was drawing Deadly Class for a few years, so I got to slowly
walk the dog,
do that.
Think about it. And
a lot of time to do that stuff. Yeah.
And was it hard to also build the world? Because we're in a fantasy world, but we've got science fiction elements, and you've got like giant lizards and gods. So how do you make it coherent in terms of universe building?
There's actually one other aspect to go back to also is that at the time that I was doing it, there wasn't as much all ages stuff in the comic book world, and I was like, it'd be really nice if there was more all ages stuff. But it's kind of funny, it took me long enough to develop it, and I was working on Deadly Class long enough that by the time Kaya was coming out, there was more all ages stuff in the world. So that was kind of a cool thing to see happen.
And especially like Jonah from Chris and Laura
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between. I had this dream of doing like a three-way like Headlopper, Jonah, Kaya like kind of crossover, but it never happened. Different company for Jonah at least. Same for Headlopper and Kaya. But to get back to the other question,
the universe building.
The universe building was a lot of just stuff. It's again a long series, so it was just stuff that I thought would keep me interested. I know kind of it's an odyssey, so they kind of reach different towns and cities and villages and kingdoms and whatever along the way. And some of it is like a lot of my thought process for that is I take some kind of a fantasy trope, and then I think of like, well, what's the sci-fi kind of parallel to that fantasy trope? And and I try to kind of like mesh the two, and because it's supposed to be like a Conan style. Conan's a huge, like, the main influence on it. She's like a tiny little pint-sized Conan, basically. Like, she doesn't talk too much. She's just a tough little kid. And it's taking that ancient world, I'm blanking, the Hyborian age, like all the Conan, that's type of stuff, Atlantis and all these things that Conan comes from, and taking that, but the world is the Earth so far in the future that it's sunken back into ancient Egypt, Babylon, this kind of a thing, you know. So yeah, it's taking those two. So there's robots and there's sci-fi stuff, and they go to this world, this haunted city. In one of the arcs, in the third arc, where it's like they go to a haunted city, but the idea kind of is that it seems like everyone's ghosts, but actually there's a malfunctioning time machine from that's been there for 1,000 years that just makes people basically kind of on this repeat, you know. So it's like, to our fantasy characters it looks like ghosts, but if you to the reader it's more like they understand there's a science fiction aspect to it, you know. So I just think that's like a fun little mashup, you know.
And you mentioned before that you already have the ending planning. So joke support. Less, yeah. How do you construct the way to this ending? Because like you said, though, it's gonna be 8 books. So that's why you're telling me right now. But maybe in 2 or 3 years you're gonna say, so finally it's 9 or 10 books.
Yeah, that might happen,
because you from experience with discussing a lot with you artists and writers, like you get caught up by your own story and you just want to bring another new arc, or on the opposite side, sometimes like sales don't add up and you have to wrap it up quickly before anticipate it, because you also have to make a living, and you have to get to a new story to make a living. So how do you see yourself in 3 years? Like, would you be ending Kaya, or maybe you think it could go longer?
It is true. Like, like Deadly Class was supposed to wrap up at like wanted to end at issue 50, and ended up being like issue 56 or something like that. It's just, the ending, especially, obviously you need people are invested in the story. You can't just kind of be like, good enough, whatever. Like, you got to end it right, or else no one's gonna remember it as well as you hope, you know. So yeah, I'm sure the last arc will be longer than any other arc, because I know it's going to be the same deal as Deadly Class. For sure, I'm going to need more space just to land everything and have it end properly and in a good, have the emotion that I'm hoping for at the end, you know, in the reader and in the characters. I don't know. It could be 9, because originally I think I planned it on being 10 books, and at some point, I forget when, I looked at the middle and I was like, you know what, you can probably condense this and have a bit of a tighter story, and maybe it would work better. Some elements, it's like they're exciting at the time, but maybe you don't need that, or you can fold this little story into this other one, and maybe that would actually make it more exciting, more interesting, more original, if it's like you put these two ideas together. But I have it pretty well mapped out, with hopefully a good amount of space in each arc to still like flesh out the characters more and make some more interesting emotional dilemmas for all of them and stuff. But yeah, you never know for sure. It's for me, I've never done an ongoing series before, so like for myself, writing for myself. So I think I just needed to say to myself, at least, like, it's going to be 8 books, just so I know that I have a general. The roadmap makes it eases my anxiety about where am I going with the story, you know. Like, I have it figured out. If you come up with something cool, sure, follow that along into wherever it goes, you know. But I so far, mostly what I've planned out is pretty much how I've gone on it. But I haven't had some idea pop up halfway through that's been so much better than the initial idea that, like, I had to just scrap everything. That more happens in little scenes here and there where I'm like, well, this isn't landing the way that I hoped it would. I got to go back and figure it out. But in terms of the overall, like the scene might change, but overall they're still going where I thought they would be going in the story, you know?
Okay, so it's just a technical question, because you're working also with Jason Waldie for the coloring, but you're still doing also watercolors on your panels. So how do you how does it work, this relationship with the colorist?
It's it's like one aspect that I, like Deadly Class, I have a certain style, but I like to kind of turn up or down different parts of what inspires me depending on the work. Like with Deadly Class, it was a lot of like punk rock posters, Jaime Hernandez, David Mazzucchelli, a lot of black and white, kind of like a lot of people that I thought were Frank Miller, people that I loved in the 80s from when that book is set, you know? And this one for Kaya, it's like I thought of Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings and, Frank Frazetta. And, I think of like some of the great like fantasy artists like Mobius, some of the great fantasy artists that inspired me along the way and try to turn that aspect up in my own work. So I wanted the colors to be more lush, and I wanted to do watercolors for myself and then give it to Jason Wordie, who's a very different kind of colorist than Lee on Deadly Class, more detailed and stuff like that. So we just worked together. I saw that he did a thing called First Knife with Simon Roy and who else was on that book? It was a similar kind of world that he was coloring, and I just saw that and I thought, okay, if he can do that, I feel like it would work well in this two different. They were both like post-apocalyptic worlds, the First Knife thing, but it was so far in the future that the apocalypse was like far in the past, and it's kind of the same thing with Kaya. It's like it's that kind of a world, and he was able to do a lot of atmosphere stuff. And I contacted him and got him to do kind of a tryout on the first like the prologue that I did. They're stuck in the desert, and he did the colors on that, and it's like I could feel the dryness and I could feel the dust being kicked up by their feet, and it really brought me. It is like. Some of that is my watercolor stuff that I do like mid-tone watercolor stuff to help with the colors. Tones, yeah. And then he takes that and kind of like deepens makes it even more, three-dimensional and more immersive. And I was like, I feel the heat that these characters are experiencing. So I knew he was the guy to go with, like, not that I was trying out other people, but it's like, it just like,
yeah, but
he nailed it basically.
Yeah, you got the intuition because you're a professional artist also, so you know who to look at. What
you can see through their other work. They're like, this seems like a good fit, Yeah, and he's just like continue to do that in all the different and it's also like like I said, they go through a lot of different environments. They go to different. It's an odyssey across the map where each arc has its own thing, like in the second arc, they're going to mutant lands and it's all swampy and kind of bright radiation type colors. So he's able to adapt to the different worlds really well too. Yeah.
And so while you're doing Kaya, so you did like a short story for DC for their DC All In special. So you still managed to take the time to do some side projects for big companies or maybe your other creators.
Yeah, that's a good example of being able to say like yes or no to a project. It's like they came to me. I used to say yes to every single thing people would offer me when I was first starting out, because you're just like, I'm trying to pay the bills, I'm trying to get as much work as I can, and eventually, hopefully, like after Deadly Class happened, I don't remember what it was, but like the first thing I said no to it felt scary, but also very freeing to be able to finally be able to say, it's fine, I don't need to do that, But yeah, they came to me and. It was like so many checks off the fun list. It was like working with Scott Snyder, working on mostly Jack Kirby Fourth World characters that I love. Like Darkseid's like one of my favorite characters ever. I get to introduce these new versions of these DC superheroes, like before the Absolute Universe comes out. And the last point was like, well, I'd love to do that, but Kaya does well, but I don't want to disappear and have anybody. I don't want to one reader to drop this comic unless they just don't like it anymore. That's a different story. But I don't want them to forget about it because it's been a few months since it's been on the stands. So I was like, I need Kaya to come out on still a monthly basis, and I need to have a bit of a long deadline on this thing. I can't do like a page every day or whatever. I need a little bit longer than that. So they said yes to that, and that was it. It was just like, okay, so I can keep Kaya going. I can do these pages. I can get this done. And, there's a few different aspects. There's the fun. Then there's the business aspect of like, well, maybe if this will get a lot of eyeballs on this. A lot of people will be checking out this comic. If maybe even just a small portion of those people like that, follow me to Kaya. There's all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, it was a bunch of things. It's a paycheck that helps me pay my creative team. There's all these little other aspects to think about. But mostly it just seemed like a fun gig, and it was a blast.
Okay. And in the foreseeable future. So you're just doing Kaya. So there's no other stuff, because maybe I think I saw in an interview that you wanted also to write something for another artist, which would be also something else.
I have one thing that's been kind of percolating for quite a while, but I mean, I don't know when that'll come out. I'm writing it, and I have an artist drawing it. It's like I'll eventually talk about what there's not enough of it done right now. It's really like, I don't know for sure. I'm hoping we can be fast enough that eventually, like maybe like by the end of the year, we'll have something to show people. And there's one other thing that's similar to the DC All-In thing in a way. It's not in the same world or anything like that. It's my own. What can I say about it? I want to keep most of it secret, but it's for DC. It's a mini series that I'm writing and drawing. It's out of continuity, and that's it. And the same kind of deal. I was like, I've had this idea for this character for as long as I've had the idea for Kaya, like this, just a certain approach to a certain character that I love. And
okay, so they
say yes.
This is absolute dark side.
No, that would be cool. That would be very cool. I was thinking about an absolute thing. They were like, pitch. I was like, maybe I could do an absolute thing. They're like, not as an artist, but because it's ongoing stuff, I can't do that. Yeah. But I was thinking about a pitch for something absolute. But that kind of, I worked on it for a while, and I was like, I just didn't find a way into the character. But yeah, it's its own thing, and it's like Kaya is staying monthly. They're giving me a long enough. It's like it's going to come out later on next year, basically. So there's like, I got to do a few pages of that each week, plus my normal Kaya work. So it's a very, very busy year, but it's just barely manageable enough, you know. So yeah, that'll come out later on, like next, 2026, and Kaya will stay almost monthly, so as monthly as I can keep it. You know, I'm a pretty good worker that way. So yeah, so far I've managed to keep it like more or less a monthly book, and it's going to stay pretty close to that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. We'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah. Thank you
so much, Wes.
Cheers. Thanks.